Hi there, it's Linda from Lányos Handmade, and today we're going to be making the Danika bag. We have a couple of different styles here. One is with the Decor Straps and the handles and of course the shoulder strap. And the other one is without the Decor Straps and it uses hardware. And you can also use webbing with strap anchors. And of course there's still the shoulder strap. So it depends on whether you want to have a lot of bling on yours or just a little bit of bling. Now inside these you will find there's a top zipper and another top zipper, and they are slanted because then no matter which way you're holding your bag, I just snap that together there. No matter which way you're holding your bag, you'll have a little peek of the other color coming through the front. And, you know, you could make it all black if you wanted, but this way it shows a little contrast. This one, I used green and a fall cork. So you can see it's a little peek through of a different color on it. And that's a pretty cool feature. Now this one was the burgundy cork, yeah. I won't open this one up because it's full of stuff and it's really heavy. But that's the one I'm using every single day with the strap and the Decor Straps there too. It really holds a lot. I'm quite impressed. You can see it's full of pockets. And you can see you can use different materials. This one's a heavier canvas. This is cork. I've seen vinyl. I would just like to say though that if you are using a vinyl or a cork, it's probably best not to have something that's too heavy, because if it's too heavy, we're going to have trouble here. This is a sensitive area when we're making it. So if it's too heavy, you're going to have trouble turning it, and it might even rip when you try and turn it. So be careful with the materials you pick. It's best to use something that's lightweight. I always found cork to be lightweight and easy to sew, but some vinyls are not. Now the vinyl I have inside this one is very lightweight too. I'll put the listing down below where I get my materials from. But none of this is heavyweight material. If you choose something that's lightweight, it's easy to put in some foam inside, which I show you how in the video. And then that'll give it some more support too, right? But it's best not to actually sew with something that's too heavyweight. Now the other thing when you're making this pattern, since it's got the two high corners here, there are two different pieces to use. There's a piece A and a piece B, and these must be cut with the pattern facing up and with your print or your solid, your exterior outside of the material facing up. So everything's facing up when you cut the A's and B's pieces. And then that way you're guaranteed to have half your pieces with the high top corner here and half your pieces with the high top corner here. And it'll work out just fine. The other thing I did to make it easier for me when doing this pattern is before I started, I put all the layers together, fronts and backs, everything. And I marked this side as being the side I wanted all the zipper pulls on. Because there are 4 zippers, like here's the high one, there's one low in the back, and there's 2 on the inside, and you can see they're on the same side too. So I like all my zipper pulls on the same side, so I stopped and made sure to mention that we always mark with a Z on our exterior layer and an interior layer where we want those zipper pulls to go. Now the other thing to watch out for, is it obvious on here? Okay, with this one I squished, you know, it's really kind of arbitrary how long this D-ring tab is. With my machine I can sew really close, so I can suck these down right into the zipper and the seam of the bag. And so it just almost hides, right? It's not hanging out. With these ones, I made sure that I left them longer because I was testing out how my machine could sew this. And it turned out that some people had trouble because the D-ring tab was getting in the way of them trying to sew this seam. So it's always best to be on the safe side and leave, what's this, about an inch of space here, so that you can have lots of room to sew your zipper in. So that was the only other thing that I wanted to mention. I might be able to sneak them in, but you make sure you leave lots of room for yours, unless you know your machine can get in really close and can sneak in there. So like I said, I left all the links below for all the materials and hardware and everything I used. So I'm going to leave chapter links below so that you can go right into your spot where you want to learn about. It's a long video, but then there's lots of steps to the bag. But you'll be just fine if you just take it step by step and take breaks. And I had lots of coffee and chocolate too. Now I did sew all mine on my domestic machine, all this, and I had a really narrow zipper foot and it let me get in close here. So it all depends on what kind of a machine you have and what kind of feet your machine has. And the last thing is the strap and the handle are going to be in a separate video that follows after, just trying to cut down on the length of this video. And at the same time, I'm going to show you my new toy. It's so light, it's easy on my wrists. It is a Vario creative tool, and it punches the holes so that I can put in my Chicago screws. And it also has attachments you can buy separately so you can put in rivets. So I'll show you how this thing works when I do the straps. Okay, so that'll be fun too. Okay, so here we have our piece A's and our piece B's. And the instructions say 2 of your exterior material and 2 of your lining. I've got interfacing on my lining. This faded part here, this is the right side. It's hard to tell. And this is the interior of my bag. We need 2 of those. And we need 2 of lining again. Okay, now it's very important to cut these right side up only. So every single piece that you cut, you're going to make sure you can see your print, or you can see your solid, or you can see this faint thing that I almost got mixed up, which was the right side and which was the wrong side. And then you can put interfacing on the back of it too if it's really flippy floppy. It's your choice. If you're using canvas, you can put interfacing on it too. Or you can use a harder stabilizer. It's up to you. I don't know what your materials feel like, you know, how strong they are. But it would be nice to make these pieces, the exterior pieces at least, stand up a little bit. So I might get some foam and cut it smaller than this piece by about 1/2 inch. And I'm not going to sew it on because I don't want to mess up my cork, but I'm going to spray some adhesive on here and put the foam down on top, and that'll help keep it up. But we'll see how flippy floppy it is as to whether I'm going to do that or not. So we have to keep all our high top corners here together when we're making our front and back pouches. And our front pouches all face this way, and our back pouches have to face this way. So in the end, you're going to end up having a back pouch and a front pouch on top of it. And when it's all lined up and finished, this is one pouch, this is another pouch, and you're going to have print and solid, no matter which way you hold your bag. There will be print and solid. And these will be zipper tops. Now, of course, since it's a zipper pouch, you have to have some lining in it. So let's get our lining pieces lined up. And I made these little handy labels here. So for the front pouch, you need your, excuse me, I can't talk. For your front pouch, you need your exterior piece, A, right side up. Then you need a lining piece, right side down. So if we put it right side down, we have to make sure that the high tops match. So you're alternating between piece A and piece B all the time. Next, we need a lining right side up. So let's get one of those. I've got them all mixed up here. There's a lining right side up. And then next we need an interior right side down. So if you look at them, they're like this. I will move them so you can see. Okay, so right side up, right side down, right side up, right side down. So that's for our one pouch, and we can put the zipper on it just like we're making a usual pouch. And when you open the zipper, you'll have lining inside your pouch. So I'm going to use this and clip all this together. We do take it apart, you know, to do some work on the interior part here and put the zipper on and everything. But when you're doing with one pouch at a time, you can keep your mind on what you're doing. Now the back pouch, I've got a label for it too. I want the interior piece right side up. I want an A lining right side down. So that is which one? This one. So that it matches up with the high tops here. And then I want another lining piece right side up. The high matches again. And I want an exterior piece right side down, so that we can have, this is one zipper pouch with the linings in it. So I'm going to clip that together. So now you can see when you're finished these two pouches, you'll have the high tops here, and it'll work out just fine. So now I'm going to go make, I want some decor straps on the front of this, and I'll briefly show you about the anchor hardware, the strap anchor hardware that goes here. I'm not going to do it for this bag, but I'll show you how it goes. Okay, there's a few ways to make your handles be attached. One of them is to use hardware like this, strap anchor hardware. Make sure you're in from the side edge as far as you're supposed to be, and make sure your washers for these things are level. Some of them go this way and some of them go this way, so it just depends on what kind you have, right? But your washers have to be right level with each other here. So it's going to be deceiving seeing the slanted edge, because you really have to be right here. Okay, so make sure you draw a line across, you know, do some markings, measure carefully before you poke your holes in, and then put these things in. One goes here and one goes here, and then that's it. We forget about it because we'll attach the handles to it later. Another way to do it is to make the decorative straps. Now, I didn't have any in this finish, so I pulled the slider off. It's not that hard to do. I just stuck a screwdriver in there and unbent it, and the slider, I threw it away. So I have this piece, and it works too. So if you have, now when I was cutting this, I didn't use my cutting machine, so I used a rotary cutter. So I did a little bit, following the pattern that was on top. Now with this one, I ran off the edge, and it's kind of gumbled up there. So when I put these together, I'm going to make sure the ugly one's on top, because when I fold it over, it's going to be hidden. Okay. The other thing is we trim the sides. So I'm going to use double-sided tape to hold these two pieces together, and then go around the edge stitching it. And any place that I went to overlap here, you can see a little bit of black showing. I'm going to then take my rotary cutter and trim it off again so that two pieces match up. So that'll top stitch, edge stitch these two together. Then we put on our hardware. I don't know what kind you have, but that's all I had in this finish. And one kind of strap, decorative strap, just gets sewed on to my bag. So if you have your bag here, find the markings, sew it on, and do it here. You might not want to top stitch if you don't have any hardware, because then that would be double rows of stitching, unless you like double rows of stitching. So sew it on and around here, and that'll take care of it if you don't have any rivets or Chicago screws. If you do have rivets and Chicago screws, then what we're going to do is we're going to use these only to stick it on. So once we've top stitched this like this, and put the hardware on. Get in there. And we measure out where it's supposed to go on both of them, because there's 2 of them on the front here. There will be another one here, double layer. Then we punch holes through and attach our rivets or Chicago screws. And that will fasten this down. And since it's edge stitched nicely, it will look good. And it'll be kind of cool watching that there's just some rivets holding it on. So I'm going to, for now, oh, and another thing I was going to say is one of our testers did something different. She didn't use 2 colors exactly the same. So she had one maybe in a solid and one in a print. So when she folded it over, the print from the back one came forward to the front. So you don't have to have 2 exactly the same. So we're going to have 8 of these pieces. And I think I've lost one already. 2, 4, 6, 7. Yes, so I have to go find my other one. So we're going to have 8 of these. And right now we're just going to top stitch them together. And then after, we're going to trim off the edges here that are exposed. And just like my mom used to always say, one more thing. Not these. Let me get them. Just hold on. I've got strips of Decoville that I use to reinforce if this material is not strong enough. The cork is strong enough. Well, maybe. I might do it with the cork too. I just make sure that there's inside this where it's going to bend, right? I want to make sure that there's something there besides just the cork or the vinyl, whatever you're using. So I'll cut off pieces of this and sew them inside too, so that makes it stronger. So that's why I usually keep strips of stuff around so that I can use it. So I did my top stitching. I trimmed anything that was hanging over here. And I put my holes in according to what the pattern piece says. Now remember, if you're just sewing these on, you can do a single row to attach them, or you can do a double row, like one for top stitching and one for attaching. But since I've got these Chicago screws here, I can use these. Where's one nice one? There's a nice one. I can use these, and it's not going to stand up there. And I can put my Chicago screws in. So I'll put it through the layer of the exterior according to the measurements in the pattern. So I'm going to go punch some more holes and attach these Chicago screws, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. And then we can go on to the next step. These exteriors will be done after we get the straps on. So there we've got all our, I use Chicago screws, but you might have rivets. So I put them all on this side. This is probably the front or the back. It doesn't matter. They're both exactly the same. And I put them all on this side. I don't have any really fancy hardware here, but this will still look good with a cork strap coming out of it. For the other look was the diamond shapes that we put on, and that's to put the handle on later. So I don't have one being made now, but this is what the diamond shapes will look like when you do them. Just put them in, leave them there, make sure there's backing on them, just like I put backing on this. Make sure there's backing on there. I even stuck some glue on so it could kind of stick together. And yeah, so those are the 2 options for putting our handles on. And before I go, the one thing I didn't mention is I think I'm going to sew this down, just baste it down on the ends here, because it'll help later when we're sewing our seams together to have this secure. So I'll sew it down on both these. I better do it right now before I forget or else. Okay, so I've tacked these down on the bottom right there so they won't bend up when I'm sewing this bottom seam. And I've also spray glued some foam on the back. I think I'm going to trim this one down a bit because I don't want it in the, well, you know, seam allowance where I'm going to sew the zipper. So I'm just going to snip this back a bit. And you'll notice I ran out of, this is all the foam I have left in the house. This. So I just barely got pieces that we're good enough, but this is good enough. So this is finished. I'm going to put it aside to dry, and I'm going to move on to the interior part. And when we're doing the interior, we should also remember, I'm going to mark which side I want my zippers on. I'm just going to clip this for a minute here. And clip this one for a minute, because I want my zippers to be, and this is the bag here, I'm fussy. And I always aim for my zippers to be so that this is sitting against my body. I want all the pulls here on the high side, which is good for this. Is this the front or the back? This is the back. So when it comes to the front, I want all the pulls to be here, because this is the way it's going to face. I want the pulls here. So I'm going to put a little mark here that this is where the pulls go. And then I'm going to put a little mark on these ones saying this is where the pulls go. So it's all on the high side on one and the low side on the other. Even if I'm doing something inside, I want it on the high side of the front and the low side of the back. So I'm going to put a little mark here. So now we get to start on our inner layers here. This is the back from my back pile, not from the pieces that I'm making my front out of. So I want my pocket, my pleated pocket, to be on the back. I've marked where the zipper is supposed to be. I want that zipper on there. And when this sits on my body, it's going to be here. So the short side here is going to have the zipper, because I like the pulls here. So I have got this, and I'm going to put it together, right sides together, and sew the two and leave an opening at the bottom so that I can turn it and press it. And then after it's turned, we'll put it on here and put the pleats in it. I'm going to sew this on here too, because I want to have my little label on here. I have some interfacing. I'm not going to fuse it to my vinyl because who knows what will happen. But I am going to glue it a bit, double-sided tape, anything, just so it sticks there, because this sewed onto this vinyl alone, I don't want it pulling eventually, ripping it. So maybe this little bit of interfacing will make it stronger so that it doesn't pull. So to start with, I'm going to put on my label, and I'm going to sew these two pieces together. Okay, now that I've sewed the two pieces right side together and turned it, I use this little pokey thing to poke out the corners gently. I've got this open hole at the bottom. Label's on, but now I have to close the hole by sewing around, edge stitching. And then after, I'm going to go and put the folds in that we need to make the pleats. So I'll draw some lines on where the pleats are supposed to be and go press it. And then I'll come back and show you what the next step is. Okay, I pressed this and I drew my center line down. I'm going to edge stitch these so I don't have to worry about the pressing coming out. It'll make a nice sharp edge. And then I have a very faint center line here that I have to line up with the center, and I have no centers cut on here, so let's get some center marks on here. I don't want to draw on this side. I think I'll draw it on this side. And I'll eyeball it on this side where it's supposed to be in the center. I might be able to get away with it on the bottom, but I'm afraid it might not wash out. So be careful if you end up with a marking pencil that doesn't wash out on your vinyl. And when I sew it down on here, I'm going to sew through the interior layer and the interfacing to make it stronger. So for now, edge stitching and sewing it down the center. Okay, I put my center line on and I can't see it. Apparently I don't have one color that shows up on this or this. I edge stitch these two pleats in. I've got a center line marked here and how far down it's supposed to go. So the bottom I know where it's supposed to land, but still the top of it I'm not too sure. So I'm going to have to be very careful because we want it lined up on this center line. The double-sided tape will help hold it, and all I'm sewing at first is the center line. I do have some interfacing glued on the back to help me. And then after we fold in each side of the pleat, and we sew it across and up this side. And I like to do a little square at the top to help hold it down too. Square, triangle, whichever. So let's get this sewn on here now. First this seam and then that seam. Okay, center line done. Keep in mind you can go over it twice, and you don't have to go in the same row of stitching because then it just weakens, perforates too much this vinyl that we have. But on the other side, you can see I went slightly off both times because it's not going to make much of a difference to the size of your pocket inside. So now we push these two things in to meet the center. I'm going to get this to hold them down. I will have to remove it when I'm sewing at the bottom, but in the meantime, it'll help. And then I'm going to check the measurements here to make sure everything's nice and even. And then I'm going to sew this way. And then this pocket will be done. Pocket done. Keep in mind, you can hack this and make it, probably wider. How much? Probably an inch wider on each side. So you could add a couple of inches to this and still keep it big, but inside your seams. So there's a hack for you if you want to try it. Oh, when I'm sewing close to these fat edges here, I start from the narrow part and go to the fat part and come back again. And then I go to the fat and back to the narrow. And I do the same thing when I'm sewing this on too. I start from here and I go this way and around, and then I tie off these ends, right? And then I start from here and go up and around and I tie off these ends. Then I've got this big nasty part here. And sometimes my machine can go up a hill better than it can go down a hill, even if I have a hump jumper. So I start here, go up and come back again. And so it ends up with a double row. Nobody's going to see it. It's at the bottom of the bag, and it still holds it really well. So this is done. So I'm going to go get my overlay now and measure where it's supposed to sit here. My zipper overlay. Now you can put this pocket on both sides, the interior front and the interior back. It's up to you. You can put your zipper overlays on both sides. I am going to because I like having zippered closures. So this is just a quick pocket for slipping things in, but I actually prefer having a zippered one. And this kind of makes it look pretty too. So anyway, I'm going to put one of the zipper overlay pockets on both sides, the front and the back, but I want to make sure that the zipper pulls are where they're supposed to be. So I have to put the zipper pull where I've marked so that in the end, all my zipper pulls are in the right spot. So now I've got my pocket sewed on nicely. I'm going to do the zipper overlays for the zipper pockets. I used double-sided tape to put them on. And if you want to check if they're level, don't measure from the top because the top is slanted. Measure from the bottom to make sure it's level both ways. And make sure it's centered. So I'm just going to sew around the outside of this right now. And then I'll cut out the middle. But first I'm going to sew out the outside. On both of them, actually. I've got two. Okay, we sewed around the outside and we cut out the inside. You can see it's exaggerated so that we can sew the zipper onto the cork part here only. I might even try and trim that off a bit more too. I still have this one to cut, so I'm just going to cut this one out. Okay, so this is going to be the top zipper, and I want to have these two pulls on it. And this is going to be the inside zipper, and I want these two pulls on it. When I sew them on, I have to pay attention to which of these corners, not that one, but this one. I want the zipper on here, and the zipper on here. So on one of them I want the pull on one side, and on one of them I want the pull on the other side. But I marked it, so I'm okay. So let's put these on. So I'll put the long ones aside for now, and we're going to be working with these ones. So my zipper goes, this is the wrong side, this is right side up, and this is right side up. Isn't that strange? And we'll just line this up here. Might as well do the next one too. This is right side up, and this is right side up. And we're going to sew this zipper on here, and sew this zipper on here. And after we put on the other side, turn that up, have this right sides together, and line it up here. And then when we open it up, after it's sewn, you'll have the right sides of your lining and the right side of your zipper facing the wrong sides of your lining. And this one, we turn it up. And we have our linings right side together, but our zipper is facing the wrong way. So when we got our zipper sewn on, right sides together with the inside, wrong side of the zipper, and wrong sides together with the right side of the zipper, because this is then going to be sewn on to here. So when you open it and stick your hand in, you're looking at the right sides, but at the same time you've got the zipper you can open. So for now, I'm just going to sew my zipper on. Okay, this is what I did when you weren't looking. I suddenly realized I didn't have any zipper stops on the ends of my zippers. So I put those on, just zigzag, real big zigzag on the spot, back and forth. And I did that with these ones too, because you know darn well I'm going to yank this pull right off the end before I finish this bag. So we have this done. Remember I said sew it so the right sides are together with the bad side of the zipper, and this is the right side of the zipper with the bad side of the fabric. I did press it, and I also edge stitched it so it would sit flat. Now I have to look at this, and which end has the zipper pull? This one. So I'm going to put this on top of here and make sure the zipper pull is there. And we'll just, oh, I should get some double-sided tape on the edge of that so I can hold it down. We're just going to sit it down here, and we're going to sew around the inside. You have to move your zipper pull as you're sewing, and be very careful, like hand crank it over the actual zipper part of it. And then this one goes on here. And you'll notice this one says zipper on top, so we have to turn it around and put it this way. I mean, it's no crime if you don't do this, you know, but I like to try really hard to get my pulls all on the same place on my bag. And don't go too far this way or that way. Try and get the center lined up. Make sure there's enough space on both sides. So I'm going to get some double-sided tape and secure this, and then I can sew it down. Okay, it's sewed on, and I've got the pulls on the right side. Yep, there's my little Z. And there's my pull with my little Z. And I checked the other side, and you can see I didn't go too far off. It's nice and even. The next thing we do is pull this down, and we're going to have to trim this off. And then we'll clip all this together and sew around. And even though I'm always putting my pins in this way, it's best to sew it this way because then you can see what you're doing. Let's move this. So I sew around here. I zigzag too because I don't want my inside of my pocket fraying. And so I sew once around and I zigzag once around. You don't have to do the top because it's already sealed up. So I'm going to do that with both of these. And then I shall come back and show you what it looks like and we can move on to the next step. So now I've got my 2 zipper overlay pockets done. And they're all sealed up. And I'm just going to take a break and make another one of these. This was the size used when the pattern was being tested. And I'm going to make another one with the size used actually in the pattern. So you can see I've put my pockets on both. They're the same height, but this one's wider. And this wider one is the one in the pattern. It doesn't look too wide, but my phone fits easier in this one than it did in this one. This one was a bit snug. Anyway, we have our front and our back. Now we can put our snaps on, and it doesn't really matter what, you know, sometimes it matters which one goes where, which one of these goes where, but it doesn't really matter right now. I've drawn the washers where they're supposed to go on both pieces, and I've also put some backing on. And I can poke the little holes in here. Make sure I'm in the light so I can see. And then I can push this through. And then push it through here again. Like I say, this thing is too big, but it's easier for me to handle if it's big. So I'll cut it down after I get it on there. And then I got a washer. I need something to push it down. I did check before I poked the holes to make sure the holes here and the holes there lined up. But I will check again after I get this one set in, just to make sure. And just put some tape on there. I'm going to cut this down a little bit. It doesn't matter so much here, but you don't want it on here because we have to put a zipper in there, right? So I'm going to cut that down like that. Put some tape on. I might even put a little bit of glue on because it'll make this stiffer. So where's my other one? Right there. I'll put my other one on. So a little bit of finishing touches and then I can get the zippers ready. Okay, so we've got our D-ring tabs. I put a little strip in here of Decaville. And all we have to do is baste it a bit here so we can catch the Decaville and we can catch the D-ring. This will later be sewn onto our bag. Okay, so we're going to do that with those two. Just fold them in half and make sure that you catch the Decaville. And on these ones, I think I need some double-sided tape just to hold this down while I sew it. I'm going to just fold it over and sew across so that it holds it. And we have 4 of those to put in, 1 for each end. So there are tabs on both ends. You might want to check afterwards if your zipper that is exposed, the teeth that are exposed are the length that you need. Make sure that you haven't missed anything. So I will get this sewn up, and then after we can start sewing in our zippers. This is so exciting because we have hardly any pieces left. I've just got the gusset sitting there untouched. But I checked the measurements here of the teeth that are exposed, and they're the same on both, and they're the same as what's in the pattern. I've got my zipper tabs on the end. I've got my D-ring tabs. And I put everything back together again according to the label for the front and the back pouch because I want to hold it up and see, this is where the zipper is going to be, right? The pull, that's my lining. And this is where my zipper pull is. And then on the back, This is the same side. This is where my zipper pull is, where it's supposed to be, and my lining, and where my zipper pull is supposed to be. So I've got all my zipper pulls lined up where I want them. So now I'm going to take off this part, the exterior, because I have to put the D-ring tab on. And the D-ring tabs go on the high point of this. And we have a lot of overhang because I like to have them close to the seam that I'm going to put in, or the zipper that goes here close. But they will go on the high points. So we can put this aside. I'm not taking it apart, but I'm going to take it apart, just this one exterior layer, and leave the rest together still. So my exterior layer needs 2 of these on, and put them according to the measurement, how far in. You can stick them in more if you think that your machine's not going to be able to handle, because this gets centered here and this gets in. So you're basically sewing 2 on top of each other, right? Now, if your machine can't handle it, you can always move it in to here. You see where it's off the tab? Because that's where it's going to end up lying. So where we put it right now is going to be on top of the tab. And I'm okay with mine, but if you're worried about yours, then do something different. Center your zipper. And wherever your zipper's centered, then that means that's the tab. And put this here. So it'll end up going in farther than what we expect. Right now it goes here, and it's going to be on top of this centered zipper where the tab lands. And that's okay for me. But your machine might not like it. So if your machine doesn't like it, remember, center your zipper. You do measuring, and put your tab here and measure. And that's where you want your tab to go, okay? So right now I'm going to follow the pattern instructions and put it where the pattern says. And sew it, just baste it on so that it stays while I sew the zipper. Okay, so I've got my D-ring tab sewed on here, just basted. Now, I've got this one centered. Yes, that's the center. Oh, it looks a little bit off. I'm going to double check that. But it might be there, it might be not. I'm going to check it. Anyway, this is how you clip it down. Right side of the zipper with the right side of your exterior. And then you sew your zipper on. Don't sew past this point, okay? Just sew between your zipper tabs. They're a good reminder that just keep sewing between your zipper tabs only. Let's leave this unsewn. It'll make it easier when we turn our bag later. And don't forget, before we start sewing, let's make sure that this zipper pull, when it's closed, is here. Because on the other one, it's different. On the back one. This is the front one. And we're trying to keep all our zipper pulls on the same side, so let's check. This says zipper, yes, and that says zipper pull. So we can sew it on now. Okay, I sewed my zipper on. I'll just fold it back here and take a good look. Now we have to stick our other piece on, which is going to be the interior. And I've got the centers marked here. Yes. And so I line this up and clip it on there, and we'll sew it again too. And then after we're finished sewing that onto the other side of the zipper tape here, we'll be finished with these outside layers, and we can put the lining inside. So let's go get this sewed on, and then I'll come back and put the lining on. Okay, we've got both these pieces on now. So this is what your front pouch is going to look like. And now we have to get lining in here because it's not really a pouch without lining. You'll notice we've got our zippers here, so that's good. And we're not going to top stitch this yet until we get our lining in, because I want to top stitch the lining and the outside and the interior together. So let's get these other two pieces. These are the fronts. We're going to need one this way. All these big, huge threads. And we're going to need one this way, and I've turned this all around. Okay, so let's just do one at a time. Flip this over here, line this up. I don't have any center mark. I'm going to take a break and make a center mark here. Okay, I'm back again. We've got our center mark. Let's clip this together. If you had, did you have trouble, I don't know, with sewing on a slant? Because quite often it helps if you're sewing on a slant to have interfacing underneath. If it, you know, it can't be fusible if you're using materials that can melt, but it does help just to run a strip of interfacing of some sort, something really light when you're putting in your zipper, so that you don't have your material stretching any more than it has to, even if you have to use double-sided tape or something to hold that material down. Sometimes it really helps. Like, I won't have the problem with this one because this is cotton and it's also interfaced, so it supports sewing on a slant. But sometimes with vinyls, they stretch on a slant, and it's like against the grain. So you might want to have your interfacing go all the way up to the top so that you can sew through interfacing. Okay, I'm going to go sew this again. I'm only going to sew again between the folds of the tabs. That's what we're doing for the whole pouch, just to keep consistent, and then it'll be easier to get proper corners when we turn it. So then after that, it's going to look like a proper pouch. We're getting there. One more layer. So I'm going to sew that, and then we'll put the other layer on. Okay, it's sewn. How does it all look? Are we getting there? Yes, we're getting there. I'm not going to top stitch at this moment, but I will top stitch when I get this side on. But it's looking pretty good. So let's stick this on here. This one has to go on here, right? So let's flip it over. Ah, no center marks again. Okay, center marks. Now we'll have to be careful because there's a zipper pull in here, and there is a D-ring tab in here with a D-ring, but you know, we can handle it. And remember, we're only sewing between the folds of the two zipper tabs, okay? Now, I like to clip everything down so it matches up, and it helps pull this apart better, makes it lie flat. If I could iron it, I would, and that would make it even flatter, but I can't iron it. So let's open up our zipper, and I also like to pull it up a bit here, and just for now, stick some clips in. And then as I'm sewing, I can take them out, but it helps flatten it out too as I'm sewing, so that hopefully I can get a nice top stitch in here. Now, if you're worried about it, you don't really need to have to top stitch, okay? This is just something extra. And my vinyl is, I've top stitched it before, and sometimes it turns out to be a shocking mess on this kind of vinyl. But I've got a really long stitch, so I'll use that. In the cork, it seems to go nicer. So, you know, cork's on the outside anyway, so more people will see it. But I'm still going to give it a shot, stick these clips in. When we're top stitching, we again do not go past those folded tabs right here. Don't go past there. We don't want to put anything past the tabs so that we can turn it, and it'll look really nice when it's turned. Makes a better finish. Okay, I think that's all the clipping I'll do. So now you can top stitch your linings to your exterior and your interior. Put it aside, and I will make another one exactly the same as this, but I won't show you because you can always replay the video. And the next one gets made exactly the same way, except you have to remember to check which corner, the higher or the low one, has the little zipper comment on it that I put on, so that we know how we're putting everything together. It looks good. We're still on the right track, right? So always keep an eye out for your zippers and don't go past your tabs when you're sewing. I got both of them made. You watched me make one and then I made the other one. Now they may look exactly the same this way, except just because the angle is the same, but you'll notice the pulls. And I like to have my pulls on the same side when I'm wearing the bag. So these pulls, there's two there and there's two there. But when I'm wearing the bag, they go together like this. I hope I'm not shaking the table. And when they go together like that, you'll have the pulls on the same side. And inside, the pulls are on the same side too. So that's why we think so hard about this. And also you'll note I did not sew here because I like to be consistent. It helps me remember that I don't sew the ends here. I just go from tab to tab, because that way when we're putting our bag together, we can get rid of one. And we come over to this side, threads everywhere. You will see that these two lining pieces go together. And this I fold down. This I fold down. And I stick my lining together. And I move everything else out of the way with a big, huge clip. There. And then when we come to this side, it's the same thing. Everything is kept out of the way. And the lining is matched together. It doesn't even really matter if your top is a little bit more than your seam allowance. See, that's bent because it's on the inside. The outside one will be nicer. So let's sew around and get our lining sewn shut. So I've got my lining sewed up now, and I started actually from here and went up here because it's easier to go over this little bump when you've got all this feeding behind. And then I did it from the other way, going this way too, and it was easier to go over the bump. Make sure your zippers are open. Let's keep them open from now on. Yes, and the other thing, let's show one here. I've got my lines drawn on. We will need these lines, so make sure you've got them at the corners, because if we ever have to sew this, we're never going past that point, okay? And same on this side, never go past that point. And same when we're sewing on the base, we don't go past these points, because that's how we're going to get the base sewed on, is because we have that little bit of seam allowance here that's flopping around, okay? So we're never going past that point. That's our stop sewing line here and here. And there's one here too, and one on this side. So when we're sewing these pieces together, if we were making a regular pouch, we would just sew around, right? Because we would have left our turning hole here. But we're not sewing a regular pouch. We're going to sew just the top down, because that's the part that's exposed above the gusset. And then this is open because the gusset is going to be sewed on here. So we're going to sew this side now. But when we sew this side, we're only going this far. Okay? And same on here. when we're sewing this side, we're only going this far. You'll notice the high top here has a bit longer seam. I've made my markings on both here and here. So now we're just going to sew these two here down. Okay, I sewed only down to there and down to there. And I went over it a few times, but not on the same spot, just to reinforce it. We have to snip this little spot here now, but don't cut your sewing line so that we can turn this inside out and flatten it out. Yeah, don't cut your sewing line. And here's our other one sewed up. Same thing, a little bit. And let's cut at the bottom of the stitching line, but don't cut into the stitching line. And then let's turn it. And when we're turning it, we're not really turning it inside out. All right, all you have to do is fold this down. And if you have really heavy vinyl, it won't be a fun thing because this will rip. So hold this together right here because that's a weak spot right now. Now I'm going to get my little pokey thing and push these corners out just a little bit because there's a lot in there. And if it's too much, I might have to go back in and trim it. But we didn't sew on our zipper tabs, so we can get a nice little hole in here. So we want these to open, but we don't want them to rip, okay? We'll sew them a bit later to hold them. Got everything flat in there? Yeah. So that's one. And that's the other one. And these we want to flatten out. I'm just going to clip these so they don't fall apart. I want to be very careful with these spots. Now I'm going to move on to gussets. And for our gussets, well, this isn't a gusset, this is a base, so we'll leave that for a minute. With the gussets, we are going to sew two of them. And all we do is put right sides together, sew across the top, and after we've sewn across the top, we can top stitch it. But when we're top stitching, we're not top stitching it together like this. We're going to spread the seam that's sewn open and top stitch each side down, because that makes it less thick for your machine, because this has to go in with other layers too, and we don't want to be making something that's impossibly thick that we can't get through. So I'm going to start with sewing this and top stitching, and then I'll come back and show you and we can figure out the next step. Okay, I really think that this is getting into the funnest part of this bag because it's not the usual pouch. And to show you, I've done my sewing and I top stitched it, and it is pretty thin and pretty flat. And now we get to decide, one last chance, how we're going to put this together. Because I use two different colors, so I could put green on the side, outside, and the bottom for my gussets. Or I could put this again, this print, and decide that way. So I think I'm going to go with the print still. But, you know, you've got a chance to change your mind if you like. So we're going to sew on one bag at a time again. Doesn't matter if it's the front or the back. We're going to sew on the gussets. So I'm going to leave the zippers open too, because chances are we're going to need them open someday. So we line them up the way that we want the colors to go. I want my greens to match, my prints to match. And we have to do them wrong sides together. And it feels kind of awkward, so it's good to have really bendy type vinyl that you can squish in there, because we want to attach this to this. Let's get these seams to match up here, and I'll clip them. It's pouring rain out there, and so hopefully there isn't any wind that knocks our power out, because I'm busy. Now hopefully the bottoms will match up, because they're supposed to. I know, it's so awkward with heavy material to get this to stay. And make sure you keep everything out of the way when you're sewing. And we're going to sew from here to here, but we're not going to sew past that line there, either at the top or the bottom. So start here and end here. I guess X marks the spot. If you come around here, you can be a bit cautious the first time you go through, so you don't sew on top of everything, and then you can turn it back and check how it looks. You know, did you sew on top of something? Did you not sew close enough and there's a big gap? But you should be able to make it past, no problem with this. And I'm just going to do one side at a time right now, because it's so awkward. I don't want it flipping out or falling apart. If you're worried it won't hold, you can always get a stapler and staple right about here, because that will really help hold these pieces together so the top and the bottom layers don't slip. And then we can take the staples out afterwards. Okay, I've got it on. Now let's be very careful with this corner, because until we reinforce it, it could always rip. Okay, so I'm just going to check now, make sure that I didn't get anything like my pocket sucked into here. I see I slipped a little bit. Next time I'll use staples so I don't slip, but I don't know, it might not be too drastic. The way you can always tell is if you fold it like this and take a look. If there's a big gaping hole in there, that's not a good thing. Later, after we get all of our gussets on, we're going to sew down here just a little bit, just this corner, so that it doesn't ever pull. It'll have some reinforcement. Okay, so for now, let's stick on the other side. I'll turn it this way so you can see. We put our right sides together. We've got our seam allowance flattened out. There is no seam allowance on this side to flatten out, but we want to clip it in there, right lined up with the gap. Even try and squeeze the gap together a little bit so that it sews together. And just a thought here, if you're sewing right to the ends like you're supposed to, you can sew short of that line. It doesn't matter if you're 1 stitch back or 2 stitches back, okay? What's more important is not to go 2 stitches over. Otherwise, you won't have any seam allowance to sew your base on later, because your base has to go on here. And you need some space to get your base in there, okay? So it doesn't matter if you do less stitches than that line, but don't do more. So I'm going to, that side sewed, I'm going to sew this side now, just from one mark to the other mark. And remember, it might slip in here. Check to see you're not sucking anything else up into it, like this especially. You know, check as you're sewing, make sure it's still flat and the thinnest it can possibly be. Okay, this side's sewed, looks good. I did use staples. You can probably see them there. I wonder what happens if you forget to and leave staples in your bag. Probably pokes through the vinyl eventually, huh? I did wobble a little bit, but That's okay. And there's a piece of thread hanging out there, so I'm going to get rid of that. And let's put on our next one, because the other section has to go on here now. Okay, same thing. Maybe you can see better from the other side. Let's sew from here to here. Don't go over. You can go under a little bit if you have to. I got to watch out for my staples, and I've got to watch out that I don't sew any pockets in. And I can feel it's pretty flat, so I'm not sewing my top of my pouch in neither. Right about here, it's pretty good. Okay, I did my third one now, and I managed not to get anything caught in there. Remembered to pull the staples out. We only have one side left. This is going to end up looking like a tube, sort of. So let's get our one side left here. We attach this like this, exactly like we did before. You can feel where the bump is, so don't go past, because once you sew into that bump, you're sewing your top pouch down, and that won't make you happy. So let's sew from the line to the line, and we will be done. Then we can turn it very carefully. Well, you know you did well if you can't even remember which one you sewed and you took it out. But all my 4 sides are sewed now. Now I'm going to turn this just so I can reinforce those corners, and it helps to have this facing up the right way, because it's these 2 pieces that we want out, and we want these pieces in. Always hold where your seams join up and just go a little bit at a time, because you don't want to put any pressure on these things. And it helps if you have your zippers open and bend this too. Come on, baby. Squish up there, get real tiny. Okay, there it is. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Would have been easier if I undid my snap too. So now we have a really ugly looking bag. What we're going to do, leave your zippers open. That would have helped too. Make it loose instead of stiff. It's easier to turn when it's flippy floppy. But you notice we're not, like if we were making a pouch, we would have turned it through the opening. But instead we're turning it through and just turning the tube. So now to protect this, I am going to make sure my lining is out of the way again. I don't want to sew anything extra in there. And if I can, I'm even going to flatten the seams so one's facing one way and one's facing the other way, or they're both flat lying down, because I just want to sew a little bit up here and across and up here. And if you get it thin enough with everything flat underneath, you'll be able to do it. It's just that it'll protect this corner, give it some extra reinforcement. So you don't have to sew on the edge. You could sew about 1/4 inch away and go down and across. I usually go all the way across here so I can do it in one stitch, but it's up to you if you just want to do the corner. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. This one's not even flattened out because everything's lying all over the place. So I want my pockets to be out of the way. And I want my seams lying flat so that I can just stick this in my machine and sew it. Oh, that one feels pretty good. I'm going to do that one first. Okay, so get that all flattened out. so that we can sew it. Move everything out of the way. Just for a minute here, I'll clip it until I can get it under there. And I don't want to forget to mention, check if these are not, these are small holes, not super big gaps, because if they are big gaps, then you want to close them up. Okay? And just close them up by re-sewing that intersection. But of course, you'll have to turn it back out again. Now, this is not something that a free arm on a machine can really help you with, even though I do have a free arm. But basically, I was holding it like this. And I went this way and that way and that way. And I went so slow. But I think it's going to help hold my piece together better in the future so that it doesn't get pulled apart. Now, sorry for all the clanging. So the next step is sewing the base on. I could turn it back and sew the base on, but I'm kind of avoiding that step for a minute. Loose threads. I notice I've got my base here and I don't have any drawings on it, so I'm just going to take a minute to put the drawings on. Okay, I've drawn my sewing lines on there. Remember, don't go past these points here. We don't want to sew into the seam allowances. That's the base. Let's start with this. I've clipped this out of the way so you can see this is what we're actually attaching the base to, is this piece. I don't have my center point marked, but let's see if it makes a difference here. Sometimes they help and sometimes you don't need them. Let's see if this reaches properly across, if it's cut the right size, and then we don't have to worry about where the center is. Remember, there's a decor strap underneath here, so it's going to be bulky when you sew. But hopefully you've basted it on so it doesn't flip up as you're sewing. Okay, so that's the only seam allowance I want to sew here, just from where there over to there. Okay? Okay, I've sewn it. You see it's not attached to the very ends. And that's what it's going to look like. Now, make sure when you're sewing not to catch this layer in with it. And now we have to do the other long edge, but the only way we can do it is by turning the bag. So, unfortunately, I'm going to take these out so I don't lose them. We do have to pull it back a bit. Just enough so we can reach. It doesn't have to be perfect. And technically speaking, I think that reaches, doesn't it? So let's get this here and not worry about the rest of it. I am going to use staples again because those staples really helped. I am going to clip this back again because that helped too, because I don't want anything else in here. I only want to see and sew the layers I have to sew. Oop, popped off. Okay, so sew from here to here. Don't run over your staples. With this one, you don't have any other layers in the way, so you don't have to worry about that as much. And it helped that I had my needle over right on here, so I'd have a lot of weight holding this down. I'd be sewing on this edge. So I'm going to go sew this. Now, I'm sorry, you might not have been able to see that. We have the two long edges sewn. You can see there's a gap there, right? Let's do the short edges. Remember, pull this out and let's just show. Pull this out and let's sew the short edges together. So I'm going to sew this side, and you can see where you stop sewing and where you stop sewing. And there's nothing under there, right? You've pulled this little bit out of the way, the corner, and just sew from one side to the other side. I'm going to pin this and do all of it at the same time. So when I come back, it'll be done. Just pull this corner out of the way. Sorry, from here to here and from here to here. And then we'll turn it back again. Now we've got everything sewn. Don't worry about the wibble wobbles. I should have stapled. I was pulling on it and it went crooked. I don't care because that's just a smidge, okay? We're allowed a smidge. But we've got it sewed on. Now let's turn it. I want this to come out. My cork is my outside layer. So I'm going to stick my hand in the big central hole, just like I'm turning a bag. Never mind what pieces we're working with here. But let's get our cork out, our print. So the layer you're aiming to pull out is your exterior layer. You don't want to pull your interior layer out. You want to pull your exterior layer out. And then after you can put your hand in, if you can find the hole again, it's here somewhere. There it is. And you can push out these corners. Loose threads. So pull your exterior layer out of your hole that you have. Not your zipper. Forget about your zippers. They're just there. And let's get this out nicely. Okay, now I'm not shoving this inside because we have to stick the base on the inside now. I'm going to leave it sitting here. I found if this got too wrinkled as I was, pulling it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, after the bag's finished, if I put a weight in it, just a little weight, and hang it, like a weight inside this pocket and hang it. It helped pull it. So let's do the same thing with this now. We're going to stick on. Let's fold that back out of the way. And fold this back out of the way. We're going to do the same, except this time we're going to do a different order. We're going to do the long side, both short sides. I might get my staples here. This is pretty slippery vinyl. But at least it's lightweight. That helps. Okay, so let's sew the long side first. And then we'll do the short sides because we don't want to do the long sides or else we won't have any place to turn it. So one long side first. Okay. Now we have to do this short side. And it's going to be twisted a bit. So let's push this long corner out of the way and clip our short corner together. And like I said, you might want to use some staples. See how you have to twist it? it's wiggling too much. Let's get the stapler out. Now, of course, if you have heavy material, vinyl, something here, it's not going to be as flexible. So that's why the lighter the interior is than the exterior, the happier you will be. This one's pretty light. So I'm going to sew just from here to here. Okay, we are done. This side looks good. We've got one more short side to do. Don't worry if it doesn't match up exactly, because the length of a stitch is very small. I would worry more if you sewed something in that seam that wasn't supposed to be there. So it's supposed to be just 2 layers. Now let's go to the other side. Same thing, we have to twist the end around to here. If a stapler helps, then do it. Just don't forget to take your staples out, because I can see, because of the resistance from the heavy materials, it's not wanting to turn. And let's poke that corner out of there and just sew the 2 short ends together. This is crooked. I'll take the staple out as I'm sewing it so it pops back. And let's just sew from this line to this line. And the last short side is sewn. So this was different than the other one. We didn't do the 2 longs and then the 2 shorts. We did the 1 long, crooked, and we did the 2 shorts. But that doesn't matter, because 1 stitch off doesn't matter, just as long as you didn't sew anything else in there that did not belong. Because as we turn this out, it still looks good. Next, let's poke this corner down, because we want to sew the long edge. But of course the long edge has to be either sewn by hand, which is ridiculous unless you're using a cotton or something, or fold down and use the machine. So I'm going to fold all this down, the proper seam allowance, and then after I'm going to match it up with the other side and clip it together. So we've got this big gaping hole that we have to close. Does that look good? This one's a bit bumpy. Now this one's a bit bumpy. I'm happy with that. So if I sew that, it's going to look good. Okay, that's done. Now we can put our lining inside our bag. And your bag's finished. How did the corners turn out? Looking good. So we're done. I can't wait to see what you made. I can't wait to see whether you used cork, vinyl, canvas, a print, a solid, what kind of hardware you used. I'd love to see. Post in our Facebook group, leave it on Instagram, tag me. I'd love to see what you're making. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.